And then the second deal was the first deal we did right after COVID hit. So I think we closed in April 2020. And so this deal, funny enough, was actually a victim of the first financial crisis. And the picture you're seeing on the top left is the condition that the building was left in 2008, 2009, when the original developer went bankrupt. The project ended up in litigation over construction liens for 8, 9 years. They were finally resolved, and one group was able to acquire the property. Our borrower purchased it with seller financing in late 2019. They immediately signed a lease for 20,000 square feet with a global insurance company on a triple net guaranteed lease. He had to deliver the space by September of 2020. He had a construction loan lined up to close in April 2020. And obviously with COVID, that lender pulled the plug. So now the borrower was stuck between a rock and a hard place with the seller financing coming due and no new loan to continue the construction to get his tenant, which has tremendous value into the building. So we were able to step up. We originally did just over a $6.5 million loan to both refinance the existing seller loan and provide additional funds to complete the tenant improvement build out and some core and shell work for the building. Once the tenant moved into the building, and I went out and visited it shortly thereafter. So we saw the tenant, occupying and paying rent. The lease payment actually covered our debt service 1-to-1, despite the tenant being only about 20 to 22% of the overall building. And so the borrower then was working on a refinance, but they needed to complete kind of a smaller annex building adjacent to this one. And so once the lease was in place, we understood that the value was much higher. So we actually agreed to loan another little over $3 million to finish the building. And as it stands today, the building core and shell are done, certificates of occupancy, and the tenants in place. And we think conservatively, the value of the building today is about $25 million. The loan comes due in about 2 weeks. The borrower is at the finish line with their new lender, who will take the project to the next stage. And assuming that payoff comes as scheduled, the Source Income Fund will clear over $1.1 million of profit and generate just over a 20% rate of return for a 10-month loan. So this one kind of gets to the points we made about finding great assets that had short-term liquidity problems, being a stable and certain financing counterparty. The borrower was obviously in a tremendous amount of stress. And this also goes to our ability to understand a complicated business plan. This was a partially constructed office building in Colorado and had its own set of challenges. And so we rolled our sleeves up, understood the business plan, we believed in it, and we felt that the reward we were getting far outweighed the actual risk we were taking. And presuming the payoff happens in 2 weeks as scheduled, we think that this proved to be true. So those two deals, I think, just talking about them in practice gives you a flavor of how we take our strategies and what we look for and our core principles of how we operate the fund and translate that into loans out in the real world to be able to generate consistent, stable returns for investors that we have.